My mother was Domingo's girlfriend when he was down and out in the wealth circle, just as he finally overcame all obstacles and was about to marry her. My mother and I were sold to a foreign country to protect me. She was blinded and had her spine broken. When she died, there wasn't an inch of her body that was unharmed. By the time Domingo arrived, he only managed to save me, who was scared out of my wits. I handed him one of my mother's severed fingers. On the severed finger was the blood-stained engagement ring he had personally put on her. I watched as he tore off the Buddhist prayer beads from his wrist, completely turned into a demon. Chapter 1. When those people came chasing, Mother used her last bit of strength to hide me in the stinking pile of garbage. The last thing she said to me was, "Violet, stay hidden. Don't make a sound. No matter what happens, don't come out. Wait for Father to rescue you." After saying that, she fumbled to hold me, cupped my face, and kissed me hard. Her eyes had become two bloody holes. All the bones in her body were broken. She could no longer escape with me. I did as she said, covering my mouth tightly, not making a single sound. Her screams were right by my ear, each one more piercing than the last. My whole body was shaking, tears streaming down my face, but I didn't dare to cry out loud. In the end, she couldn't scream anymore, and the person hitting her stopped. Through the gap, I saw Mother, her body a bloody mess, struggling and crawling on the ground. Her broken fingers groped aimlessly on the ground, searching. Finally, it seemed like she found it. With her last bit of strength, she slipped it onto her broken finger. The next second, I saw those people approaching her again with knives. One by one, they severed her fingers. They laughed maniacally, devoid of any humanity. I didn't cry, but instead, I widened my eyes, trying hard to remember each of their faces. Chapter 2. I didn't listen to Mother's words, and after those people set her body on fire and left, I crawled out from the pile of garbage. As dawn was breaking, I found the only remaining severed finger of Mother. On the severed finger, there was a ring covered in fresh blood. I recognized that ring. Every time Mother showed me that ring, she would smile so sweetly. She said, "This was bought with the first money your father earned from working. It's very cheap, but it's my most precious treasure." Later, Father made a lot of money. He bought Mother more and more expensive jewelry, but the one she always wore was still the silver ring. When she died, she was still using her last breath to search for this ring. So, I must deliver this ring into Father's hands. Chapter 3. I hid Mother's severed finger against my chest and crawled back into the garbage heap. When Domingo dug me out of the garbage heap, I was filthy and stinking all over. My face so dirty it was unrecognizable, but his eyes were bloodshot, and he held me tightly in his arms. "Violet," he called my name with a trembling voice. "Father is taking you home." I didn't cry. I just took Mother's finger out from my dress and handed it to him. Mother is burned away. Only one finger is left. I opened my eyes wide, tears welling up in them, but I held back, refusing to let them fall. Domingo clenched his jaw tightly, veins bulging at his temples. He was trying hard to endure, to restrain himself, but in the end, he touched that finger, feeling the ring on it that no longer resembled its original form. Large teardrops still fell onto my face. "Violet, let's take Mother home." His voice was hoarse as he carefully placed Mother's finger close to him. Then he picked me up in one swift motion, but as he tried to get up, he clumsily fell back to his knees. I listened to him cry out his mother's name with heart-wrenching agony. The Buddhist prayer beads on his wrist were yanked apart by him, scattering everywhere. "Elise." He murmured his mother's name once more. When he stood up again, seeing his bloodshot eyes, I knew he had turned into a demon. Chapter 4. After returning to the capital, Domingo kept me by his side, not allowing me out of his sight. I witnessed my mother being beaten to death, completely scared stiff, and from then on, I refused to speak another word. He erected a cenotaph for Mother, except for the day of the burial. He never went to pay respects again. However, he carefully preserved the severed finger, keeping it close by. My mom died, leaving only me, her daughter. When I grow up, I'll just be sent off with a dowry. Therefore, The choice of Domingo's wife was still highly contested. My maternal grandfather's side sent my aunt over. She is my mom's half-sister. As soon as she saw me, she burst into tears, holding me tightly and refusing to let go. Poor Violet. Losing her mother at such a young age. What will she do in the future? Grandfather said, being close to your aunt is better than having an outsider marry in and bully Violet. Aunt shyly hugged me tight, then stole a glance at Domingo, unable to hide the admiration in her eyes. Brother-in-law. I just feel sorry for Violet. And for my sister. I only want to take care of Violet for her. I also looked at him. He sat on the sofa, his face indifferent, as always, showing no expression. He was just fiddling with the new Buddhist prayer beads on his wrist. It took him quite a while before he nodded. Then stay and take care of Violet. Chapter 5. My mom's best friend before she passed away. Rita found out that Domingo kept my aunt. She stormed into the house, accusing Domingo of being heartless. Elisa's body is not even cold. And you already have someone new moving in? Even if it's Violet's aunt. Elise didn't have much contact with them when she was alive. How sincere can they be? In any case, I don't feel at ease. If you insist on remarrying, then I'll take Violet with me. Domingo stood tall and graceful behind the desk. A string of Buddhist prayer beads was wrapped around the slender wrist. His fingers moved the prayer beads, and he looked up at Rita, outside the window. Shadows cast oblique lines, letting in a few strands of faint light, falling between his handsome and well-defined brows and eyes. Rita couldn't help but be mesmerized. If you're really worried about Violet, why not stay and take care of her? Rita stammered, unable to speak, but her face turned completely red. The previously high spirits were instantly extinguished. Then I'll stay for a few days first, and see how Violet adjusts. Rita also stayed behind. That night, I heard the servants talking. Aunt was furious, but she didn't dare confront Domingo and instead locked herself in her room, smashing things all night. Chapter 6. I don't like my aunt. When mother was having a hard time, grandfather and the others never gave us a second glance. It was only after my dad was taken back by the Sue family that they shamelessly started visiting us. My mom was kind and soft-hearted, but I inherited Domingo Sue's cold and indifferent nature. After all, even though I was young, I remember it very clearly. Grandfather used to scold me as a worthless girl. Aunt said I look like my mom, and when I grow up, I'll be a vixen too. None of them are good people. I don't really like Rita either, even though she's one of my mom's best friends. When my dad was poor, she urged my mom to break up, saying my dad wasn't good enough for her. But then she would secretly give my dad chicken soup and slip him money. Later, when my dad returned to the Sue family, she scared my mom, saying that now my dad was successful, he wouldn't want her and wouldn't marry her. My mom took it seriously and secretly cried several times. Once, she even quietly packed her bags and left home with me. After my dad found out, he searched for us day and night without rest. When he found us, my dad held on to my mom and wouldn't let go. After that, their wedding plans were put on the agenda. Because he insisted on marrying my mom, my dad knelt for 3 days and nights, fainting several times. Only then did the old-fashioned elders of the Sue family have to relent. My favorite is another friend of my mom's. In the wealth circle, the most gentle and kind-hearted young lady is Julia. She was my mom's roommate in college. She never looked down on my mom for being poor and humble back then. When my mom gave birth to me, my dad and she didn't have much money, so they could only go to a cheap hospital. It was Aunt Julia who paid to transfer my mom to the best hospital. She even sent my mom to the most expensive postpartum care center. Now my mom is dead. All those women outside are eager to become my stepmother. Only Aunt Julia, upon hearing the news, cried until she fainted and is still in the hospital. Chapter 7. Domingo brought me to the hospital to visit Aunt Julia. I was stunned when I saw her. She was thin and haggard, her eyes swollen like peaches from crying. As soon as she saw me, she burst into tears, holding me tightly and refusing to let go. Domingo sat on the side, watching Julia and me cry with our heads together, his eyes also moist. After we had cried enough, Julia had someone take me to wash my face and have some snacks. She asked Domingo. Have they found the people who hurt Elise? They found the ones who did it. But there's no clue about the mastermind yet. Julia was silent for a moment. Elise went missing. It was the Song family's second daughter who invited her out for dinner and shopping. Domingo. Freya Song was once the marriage partner your father chose for you. You say. Domingo with a frosty expression. There is no evidence at the moment. Julia softly said, the Song family has businesses in various Southeast Asian countries, involved in both legal and illegal activities. Domingo stroked the Buddhist prayer beads and let out a deep laugh. Indeed, the Song family is powerful. Julia Mao pursed her lips. Domingo, how about this? You marry into our Mao family. As she spoke, tears slowly fell again. If our two families join forces, your power will grow, and it will be easier to avenge Elise. Once you have avenged Elise, we will divorce, and my wish will be fulfilled. Her deep affection and earnest words moved me deeply as I stood outside the door, listening to these words. Looking at Domingo again, there was already a look of emotion in his eyes. But Julia, this is too unfair to you. Chapter 8. I have known Elise for nearly 10 years. Not sisters by blood, but closer than real sisters. Her death was so tragic. Julia stopped speaking, her voice choked with emotion. She looked at Domingo and said, if I can't do something for her, I'll never be at peace for the rest of my life. Faced with such clear and kind eyes, it seemed as if no one could refuse. I also thought he would agree. After all, having just returned to the Su family, he is not yet firmly established. Although he has endless money to spend, he has no power or influence. Being able to marry the eldest daughter of the Mao family, this beloved socialite of the wealth circle, his situation in the Su family changed dramatically overnight. But Domingo refused. He stood up. I could only see his thin back through the crack in the door. I didn't know what kind of look he had at that moment. Julia's cheeks faintly showed a very light red. There's no need for this. Not to mention it's unfair to you. If I marry someone else, I would have no face to meet Elise in the afterlife. Domingo. Julia was stunned, as if she hadn't expected him to say that. Domingo raised his hand to stop her from continuing. I understand you're doing this for Elise, and I appreciate it. Julia lowered her eyes and sobbed. Domingo advised her to rest well, then turned and walked out. He went out the door, casually scooping me up into his arms, all the way until we got home. It was the small home where the three of us had lived for 5 years. He made me lunch, 1 meat dish, 1 vegetable dish, and a soup. After eating, we rested on the balcony lounge chair, just like when Mother was still alive. Violet. He stroked my hair, his gaze filled with tenderness. I lay in his arms. I don't know how long it had been, but I felt the fabric on my back seem to be wet. I wanted to lift my head to look at him, but his large hand firmly pressed against the back of my head. I know. He must have cried again. Chapter 9. After my aunt and Rita had been getting along peacefully for 3 days, they finally couldn't hold back and started arguing. In the end, the two of them ended up wrestling with each other. Aunt had a lock of hair pulled out, and Rita's face was scratched. I was frightened again and hid in the cupboard, refusing to come out. Domingo got very angry. Both Aunt and Rita were kicked out, because both of them came to take care of me, but it ended up making my condition worse. Grandfather didn't dare to say much either. Rita knew she was in the wrong and temporarily settled down. Chapter 10. 3 months after my mother's death, the elders of the Su family began ordering Domingo Su to marry and have children. Your marriage is not just for you, but also for your elder brother and the entire Su family. As for children, the more the better. At least 3 sons, and the eldest should be adopted by your elder brother. Poor your elder brother. Always sickly. He is kind-hearted and doesn't want to ruin another family's daughter's happiness, so he insists on not marrying. But as an elder, I cannot watch him have no descendants. The Song family doesn't mind your past, nor do they mind Violet's presence, and they are still willing to marry their daughter to you. Pick a time, and let's set the wedding. Back then, in order to marry my mother, he knelt for 3 days and 3 nights. The Su family had an eldest son who was often ill, and they were afraid that this son they found might also have some misfortune, leading to the Su family line ending, so they reluctantly agreed to the marriage. But my mother died. Now Freya's song isn't giving up and wants to come over to be my stepmother. I suddenly vaguely remembered some snippets from the past. Freya is a spoiled little princess. She got to know my mother through Julia. She seemed eager to befriend my mother. My mom is soft-hearted and easily influenced. She has no sense of guarding against others. She gradually became familiar with Freya and often arranged to go out together. One night, Freya couldn't hold back and revealed her cards to my mom. At first, she patiently tried to persuade my mom to let go. Later, seeing that my mom was adamantly refusing, she started making threats. Elise, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Let me tell you, with your kind of ordinary people, I can slap 10 of you to death with one hand. If you don't break up with Domingo, I'll sell you to Southeast Asia. I'm telling you, the human traffickers over there are very fierce. They can even dig out your organs. I vaguely remember how Freya looked fierce and aggressive at that time, but my mom didn't seem scared at all. She was still smiling foolishly. For some reason, I always felt that Freya was particularly silly and naive, a bit of a paper tiger. I still remember once when my mom took me out to play. Out of nowhere, an ugly bug flew in and landed on Freya's bag. She screamed so loudly it almost blew the roof off, and she nearly fainted. My mom rushed forward and slapped the bug dead. Then Freya looked at the bug's corpse, trembled for a long time, and completely fainted. It's not that I underestimate her intelligence and means, it's just that I feel someone like her doesn't seem capable of doing such a thing. Of course, whether the Song family was involved behind her back, I am not sure. The Sue family forced my dad to remarry. He took me and Freya to meet someone. I really didn't expect Freya to turn out like this. It's like a flower that was blooming perfectly fine, suddenly wilting from lack of water. She became shriveled, listless, her whole being muddled, her eyes cloudy, devoid of any sparkle. It was only when she saw me that her eyes suddenly lit up. If Domingo hadn't stopped her, she would have definitely rushed over. I was scared. Domingo's face looked very grim, but Freya suddenly fell to her knees with a thud. Mr. Sue, she grabbed my dad's pant leg, refused to let go no matter what. Before Domingo could pull his leg back, Freya suddenly pouted and started crying. Elise comes to find me every night. As soon as I fall asleep, she comes. She insists on blaming me, saying I sold her to Southeast Asia. She resents me, haunting me every night. For the past 3 months, I haven't had a good night's sleep. I kept begging her, but nothing I said worked. It was only after much difficulty that she relented and made me swear to take good care of Violet. She said that there are bad people around you and Violet, and she was worried sick. She said my family is wealthy and influential, and the only one she knows with connections to the underworld. She also said that if I couldn't protect Violet and even a single hair on her head was harmed, she would come to take me away. By the end, Freya collapsed onto the ground, breaking down into tears. It was only after I repeatedly promised and swore oaths that she believed me and was willing to leave. Mr. Sue, I'm begging you. I really can't take it anymore. I stared at Freya in astonishment. Domingo was also looking at her. So, the arranged marriage was your idea? Yes. I threw a tantrum and begged my dad to agree. Freya, I have only one question. Do you like me? Freya's little head shook like a rattle, waving her hands as if she was facing a terrifying beast. I don't like you, Domingo. I wouldn't dare to like you even if it killed me. Domingo stroked the Buddhist prayer beads. Marriage is absolutely impossible, but you can move into the Sue house as my fiancé and take care of Violet. Freya was overjoyed. Domingo then added, just for a year. When he said this, he didn't look at Freya but looked at me. Then, he touched my face. Violet, trust father. At most, you only need to wait a year. Chapter 11. 6 months after my mom died, there were faint rumors outside about Domingo and Freya's engagement. That night, Julia sat in front of my mother's grave for the entire night. Mao's family couldn't find her anywhere and were very worried. They asked around and ended up at Domingo's place. When he found Julia at her mother's grave, she was already exhausted, fainting softly into Domingo's arms. When she woke up, she looked at Domingo with tears streaming down her face. You know very well that the Song family is the most suspicious. Yet you want to marry Freya. Aren't you afraid that when you go to the afterlife, you won't be able to face Elise? Domingo's eyes were very calm. The Song family is powerful. It's a temporary measure. I told you I could help you, Julia. I just can't stand by and watch Freya continue being her spoiled self. I can't bear to see her living in luxury and enjoying wealth. Doesn't she like me and want to marry me? Then I'll grant her wish. Tell me, what could be more satisfying than having her by my side, tormenting her day and night? Julia's face gradually softened. So you're doing this to get back at her? Yes. Domingo. Julia couldn't help herself and gently held his hand. You really are so wronged. Having to deal with someone as incompetent as Freya is simply degrading for you. This was the first time. Domingo did not immediately withdraw his hand. He said, "Who made me subject to others, beneath them?" Julia looked at him at that moment, feeling utterly heartbroken. When it was almost a year since my mother passed away, Domingo completely took over the Sue family, officially stepping into the center of the wealth circle, because he had the support of the Song family, which was involved in criminal activities. Over the past year, his hands have not been entirely clean. Those around him became increasingly cautious, not daring to make a single misstep. Even I, many times, would look at his expressionless face, when a light remark could determine the fate of several lives. I would also feel afraid. The Domingo who passionately loved my mother, gentle and calm, seemed to have completely disappeared. A week before my mother's anniversary, Domingo's new company was established abroad. He decided to take Freya and me to Country F. The night before departure, he made a call to Julia. The show is about to start. Julia, do you want to come with us? On the other end of the phone, Julia laughed heartily. Sure, Domingo. I'll go with you. In the past 6 months, his way of addressing Julia had somehow changed to Julia. In the business world, Julia went all out for him, racking her brains. Sometimes, when I'm daydreaming alone, I also wonder, if there had to be a stepmother, my mother would probably have chosen Julia. She seems truly flawless, without a single fault to be found. Even Domingo, over the past year, hasn't he gradually opened his heart to her? The day we arrived in Country F, it rained heavily. By the afternoon, the rain had stopped. Half the sky was filled with fiery clouds. Domingo picked me up and just stood there, gazing at the sky that looked like it was on fire in the distance. I knew he was definitely thinking about mother again. So was I. I remember the big fire that night. I remember mother's last scream when the fire started. I looked up at him. His eyes were very, very red. I didn't know if they were reddened by the fiery clouds in the sky. Chapter 1-2. On the third night, Domingo informed Julia that there would be a banquet that evening. Julia understood, knowing that tonight, everything would finally be settled. Stylists and makeup artists pushed in racks of beautiful dresses. Julia ultimately chose a bright red long fishtail gown with a train. The banquet was held on a cruise ship. When Julia boarded the ship, the heel of her high heel accidentally got stuck in the gangway gap and broke. She inexplicably felt a bit uneasy. The ship was brightly lit, with bodyguards and mercenaries in black, armed, standing on the deck. For a moment, she actually had the urge to retreat. But Domingo appeared. He wore a black trench coat, with a matching black suit underneath. Tall and graceful, exuding charm, he looked down at Julia and gave her a faint smile. Julia, come here. Julia, as if bewitched, lifted her skirt and walked barefoot step by step up the gangway. She extended her hand, but Domingo did not take it. He held a cigarette between his fingers, the smoke gracefully rising into the night. Go change your shoes first. I'll finish this cigarette. Julia reluctantly left. Domingo leaned against the side of the boat, gazing at the endless expanse of water. He calmly finished the cigarette. One puff at a time, he finally lowered his gaze, looking at the wedding ring on his ring finger. Elise. He gently touched the wedding ring, a softness in his eyes. Bless me. Let everything go smoothly. Many years later, I would still vividly remember that night. Domingo did not deliberately shield me from those bloody scenes. I was 6 years old at the time. But my childhood had already ended. Chapter 13. When Julia was ready and elegantly entered the banquet hall. Why are there so few people? After she finished speaking, she suddenly fell silent. Because those people were not the distinguished guests from Country F. Almost all of them were people she knew. The first person she saw was Rita. Then it was my aunt and grandfather. Her expression gradually began to change. Her body instinctively moved backward, but the bodyguard blocked the way behind her. Then, the huge, opulent door was closed and locked. Julia began to tremble. Her eyes scanned the room until they finally landed on Domingo, dressed in black. Sitting upright on the sofa in the corner, she breathed a sigh of relief, as if grasping at a lifeline. Domingo. But her voice suddenly came to an abrupt halt, as if someone had suddenly grabbed her by the throat. A person, unrecognizable and resembling a bloody gourd, was thrown out by two tall, burly, dark-skinned mercenaries, just 1 meter in front of her. The pungent smell of blood, a mass of writhing flesh. Julia was so frightened that she screamed. Her legs went weak, and she collapsed to the ground. "Do you recognize him?" Domingo asked in a deep voice. Only then did Julia realize that the lump of flesh was a man. She was very familiar with him, the sickly eldest son of the Sioux family, Kevin. Julia's cry suddenly stopped. She widened her eyes and looked at Domingo. You. Domingo's expression was indifferent and calm, like a deep, still pond. He didn't look at Julia, but instead looked at the other people in the room, who were ashen-faced. "Tell me everything you've done, one by one, otherwise, he will end up like you." Domingo, the words had barely settled. My aunt impatiently stood up, shaking her leg. "Brother-in-law, if I say it, you won't kill me, right?" Domingo was just rubbing the wedding ring on his ring finger. "You know very well whether what you did deserves death. Brother-in-law, I'll say it. I'll say everything. I was the one who instigated father not to give my sister living expenses, not to care about her. I was also the one who falsely accused my sister of stealing my money, causing father to hit her. When you were dating back then, I was the one who reported to the school, saying my sister was in an early relationship, which almost got her expelled. When my sister gave birth to Violet, I even tried to sneak into your room while she was in confinement, but the nanny caught me. As soon as my sister died, I wanted to marry you under the guise of taking care of Violet. But my sister's death really has nothing to do with me. Brother-in-law, you know that neither my father nor I have the ability to reach into Country F. Domingo slowly nodded. That's right. He knew that Elisa's death had nothing to do with her sister Olivia. He also knew that Olivia's petty and disgusting antics were far from deserving death. But he couldn't control himself anymore. You don't deserve to die. But that tongue of yours is truly disgusting. Brother-in-law. Domingo closed his eyes. Violet. Please save Aunt. As she was dragged away, she looked at me in despair again. I closed my eyes too. I couldn't hear her voice anymore. I thought she would never be able to chatter annoyingly again. Chapter 14. Rita's face was as pale as toilet paper, but she still gritted her teeth and stood up. After you started dating Elise, she introduced you to me. I liked you from the first moment I saw you, but you never looked at me directly. I was determined to make you break up with Elise, thinking that once you did, I would have a chance. I kept telling Elise every day that you were too poor, an orphan who had been trafficked, and not worthy of her, but she never listened to any of it. Instead, she felt more sorry for you and treated you even better. Later, when the Sioux family found you and took you back, your identity changed dramatically, and that's what I used to scare her every day. I said that now you've made it. There are plenty of beautiful women, and you'd definitely abandon her soon. At first, she didn't believe it, but after I said it many times and gave her lots of examples, she foolishly believed it. But you still didn't break up, and instead, you were going to get married. I was so jealous I was about to go crazy, but I never thought about wanting Elise dead. I just felt that Elise and I were both originally ordinary, average girls. But why is her life so good? Being able to marry a man like you, being loved by you like this. I no longer fantasize about being with you. I just want her to be separated from you. I just want her to become exactly like me. It was her. It was Julia. Rita suddenly pointed at Julia. It was her who deceived me, saying she had a way to make Elise break up with you. I was bewitched and believed her. Rita said this, covering her face and bursting into tears. But I never thought, even in death, that she would actually have someone kill Elise. If I had known it would be like this, I wouldn't have done it even if you beat me to death. I looked at the crying Rita, but what I was thinking was, it turns out that a person's first instinct is really not wrong. Ever since I can remember, I didn't like her. But my mother always talked about how Rita paid for her breakfast for a whole semester when they were in school. She always said, "Your Aunt Rita just has a sharp tongue, but she's really kind-hearted." Back then, when I had no living expenses and was almost starving, it was your Aunt Rita who helped me get through it. But she didn't know. People change. After Rita was dragged out, my grandfather was so scared he lost control of his bladder. He had an affair in middle age, abandoning his wife and daughter. To say he was utterly evil would be an exaggeration. Taking advantage of having a bit of money, he indulged in pleasure and debauchery. My grandmother was literally angered to death because of him. My mom suffered a lot and endured many grievances in her youth. Her body was barely cold, and he was already impatient to bring his beloved young daughter to be my stepmother. I really dislike him. But at this moment, I look at him with his head full of white hair, looking terrified and speechless. Again, an indescribable sadness and desolation filled my heart. If Mother were still alive, she was such a soft-hearted and kind person. She certainly wouldn't hold a grudge against him either. The number of people in the hall was dwindling. Later, I hardly recognized any of those people. It was my father who told me. He said these people were the ones who had bullied Mother. In the end, only Julia, who was already pale with fear, remained in the hall, along with 6 specially treated skulls. These 6 people were the scum who killed my mother. Domingo, when did you find out? Julia asked in a hoarse voice. Domingo lowered his head again and touched the ring. The day at the hospital, when you said I should marry you first. Why? Domingo slowly raised his head, his gaze deep and dark. It was like an ancient well, one that had long dried up, completely dead. Because after you said that, I suddenly remembered something Elise once said. What did she say? When she gave birth to Violet, she had some postpartum bleeding and was very weak. Domingo seemed to be lost in distant memories, his gaze gradually softening. When she woke up, she looked at Violet and said to me, Domingo, you know, before I fell into a coma, I kept thinking that if I died, I would only trust you and Violet to Julia. You haven't forgotten, have you? When Elise said that, you happened to walk in through the door. Is this enough to convict me? What makes you so sure that I hired someone to kill? Domingo, do you have evidence? Do you have evidence to prove that I did all this? Domingo laughed. You're very clever, keeping yourself completely out of it from start to finish. You misled me into suspecting Freya because the Song family has a criminal background and substantial businesses in Southeast Asia, making them the prime suspects. At first, I did suspect her because Freya did indeed tell Elise that she would sell her to Southeast Asia, but I quickly realized that Freya wasn't the mastermind. How did you find out? With the Song family's background, cleaning her name would be a piece of cake. If the Song family really did it, they wouldn't have married their precious daughter to me. Julia, do you think Freya's father, a man who has been wise and experienced countless storms in his life, would be confused about his daughter's lifelong happiness? Put yourself in their shoes. Would you marry your daughter to a man who has a vendetta against your family for killing his wife? Domingo slowly walked forward and stepped on Julia's fingers. Do you think that by leaving yourself 2 escape routes, you can rest easy? Do you think that Kevin and Freya can be your scapegoats and protect you for a lifetime? When you disguised yourself and left Kevin's villa late at night, I already had a rough idea of the truth. He desires you, yet he knows he can't give you happiness, so he willingly lets himself be deceived by you. Content to be a puppet at your command, he hoped that one day you would see everything he did for you. So even at the time of his death, he was still taking all the blame for you. But Julia, you are as cruel as a snake. You don't deserve it at all. He ended up like this because of you. Domingo kicked Julia on the shoulder. All the suffering Elise endured that day, I will repay 100-fold, 1,000-fold on you. He waved his hand, and immediately someone rushed forward to tightly bind Julia's limbs. Chapter 15. The one who wronged has a head, the one who owes has a master. That fool Elise was tricked by Rita to go out. The one who paid was Kevin. The one who acted was hired from here. And those who hurt Elise were all killed by you. Julia Mao struggled desperately. Domingo. I didn't do anything. How was I supposed to know Kevin liked me? How was I supposed to know he would hurt Elise to win my favor? What he does has nothing to do with me. Don't forget, you wouldn't be where you are today without my help. Without the support of the Mao family behind me. If you dare to hurt me, aren't you afraid of ruining your future? That's right. Domingo chuckled softly. I am where I am today. Indeed, with the help of you and the Mao family. But as for the so-called future, do you really think I, Domingo, care? Julia abruptly widened her eyes. Domingo, are you crazy? Elise is already dead. Now the entire Su family is yours. And in the future, half of the Mao family will be yours too. You, Domingo, can do whatever you want. And for a dead person, you want to throw it all away? Is it worth it? Domingo replied, for women like you. Of course not. But for Elise, I would go through hell and high water, die 10,000 times, and still relish it. Chapter 16. On the deep-sea cruise that night, Julia's screams echoed throughout most of the night. I heard that her 10 fingers were also cut off one by one. All the bones in her body were also broken inch by inch. She was sliced piece by piece with a very small and sharp knife. Her eyes were the last to be gouged out, because they wanted to keep her eyes so she could watch as her body became unrecognizable. In the end, she was burned alive in a fire. Her charred body was thrown into the open sea. After Domingo finished all this, he just left the mess behind and took me back to the country. As for how much effort the Song family needs to put in to clean up this mess, that has nothing to do with us. Before coming, my father negotiated with the Song family. The Song family will handle the aftermath. As long as it's done cleanly and efficiently, he will completely make peace with the Song family. Julia went abroad and unexpectedly disappeared. Meanwhile, the eldest son of the Su family, Kevin, also mysteriously disappeared. Domingo and the Song family searched abroad for a full 3 months. In the end, a sea rescue team found remains with Julia's DNA. They also retrieved a severed limb from which Kevin's DNA was extracted. According to a Southeast Asia sailor, he once saw the two meeting secretly on the deck late at night. It seemed like an argument broke out afterward. Kevin even laid hands on Julia. He wanted to intervene but was pulled away by someone. As for what happened next, he wasn't quite sure. But in any case, the deaths of these two were probably an accident caused by a lover's quarrel. When the news reached the capital, everyone in the circle was shocked. No one expected Julia and Kevin to have such an affair. Even more surprising was that Julia was so close to Domingo while secretly involved with Kevin, truly wanting everything, never satisfied. But to end up with such a fate, with no remains left, is quite lamentable. The Mao family didn't believe that Julia's death was an accident, but lacking evidence, they had to accept this explanation. And since then, the Mao family began to experience a streak of bad luck. It was only a short 5 years after, originally holding a place in the wealth circle, the Mao family suddenly vanished without a trace, and it's said that the younger generation of the Mao family is quite incompetent. The last bit of family fortune is feared to soon be squandered. I heard that Freya's illness is completely cured. She hasn't dreamed of my mother again. My dad and she broke off the engagement. She happily returned to the Song family. Just this past year, perhaps because she swore to my mother's ghost that she would take good care of me. She really put her heart into it. Now, she has developed feelings while taking care of me. Every few days, she would come back to see me, but she always chooses to come when my dad isn't home. If she happens to run into him, she would definitely run faster than a rabbit. On the first anniversary of my mother's death, I noticed that Dad's left hand was wrapped in thick bandages. Later, when the bandages were removed, his ring finger was missing. The wound was very neat, so it probably wasn't an accident. He took me to Mother's grave once. There were signs that Mother's grave had been disturbed. I understood in my heart. Dad must have buried the only severed finger he and Mother had left together. Chapter 17. When I was 18, Domingo was already full of gray hair. Over the years, he worked desperately hard. He wouldn't let anyone help, taking care of me all by himself. The older I get, the more I resemble my mother. He often gazes at me in a daze. Sometimes, he still blurts out at Elise, but she's been gone for 13 years now. During these 13 years, at first, many people wanted him to remarry, but as time went by, no one brings it up to him anymore. The year we returned from country F, a mixed-race boy 2 years older than me came back with us. My father named him Noah. He was an orphan, but his origin, background, and family history were all very clear. It was my father who carefully selected him from nearly 100 children to stay by my side and accompany me. And after returning from country F, I gradually started to speak, especially when I'm with Noah, because subconsciously, I always felt that we were very similar. Only people with the same wounds can hold each other for warmth. I don't have a mother, but I still have my father who loves me the most. But when he was 3, both his parents died. We really liked lying on the rooftop and whispering secrets. The pain that only the two of us would understand. We can't tell others, but we can tell each other. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years have passed. I'm 18, Noah is 20. He was taught very well by my father. In my view, he's like another Domingo in this world. I really like him and rely on him a lot. Chapter 18. When I graduated from college at 22, Noah had already been by my father's side for 3 years. He started gradually taking over the company's affairs. Domingo also began to let go. Later, Noah independently handled several tricky major business matters. My dad simply let go. After graduating, I didn't join the company. Instead, I pursued the work I had always wanted to do, which was also something my mother liked back then: antique restoration. Oh, I almost forgot. Back then, my mother and Julia both studied this, but my mother always slightly outshone Julia. Their mentor once said, "Elise has a calmer mind and steadier hands, while Julia is always just a little lacking. She should learn more from Elise." So later, why did Julia have someone cut off my mother's fingers one by one? That's probably one of the reasons, right? I heard that I'm not taking over the Sue family's company and want to focus on pursuing my passion. Freya came running to me many times. She even earnestly advised me, "Violet, feeling sorry for a man will bring you bad luck. Don't say that Noah is just your adopted brother. Even biological brothers have fought over inheritance. You absolutely must not be confused. Your father and mother only have one daughter, and that's you. Sue family can't just let others take advantage of us." Freya and I are on pretty good terms now. When she said that, I snuggled into her arms and acted spoiled. "Isn't that why we have you, Aunt Freya? If Noah ever dares to stray, you can sell him off to Southeast Asia." Upon hearing this, Freya became even more worried. I was originally a pampered young lady who never lifted a finger. I never planned to take over the family business. Never intended to worry about anything. Just prepared to spend money lavishly my whole life. So how come now that I'm middle-aged, the burden has gotten heavier? I was amused by her and laughed. "Aunt Freya, don't you think being a powerful female villain is also cool?" Freya thought about it seriously, as if she was a bit tempted. She stroked my hair, and did so for quite a while. Somehow, her eyes suddenly turned red, and she was about to cry again. I gently hugged her. "I know. So many years have passed. Fewer and fewer people remember my mother. Even my aunt no longer secretly mumbles unclear curses about her. Grandfather had a stroke and has been dead for several years. He spent the last 2 years on a sickbed, with no one to care for him. He developed severe bed sores and suffered greatly. I heard that in the end, he was desperate for death to find relief. And then there's Rita, who later married a husband with a disability. Life wasn't going well. When the man was in a bad mood, he would drink. And after drinking, he would hit and curse her. But she kept having one child after another. And divorce was something that could never happen. The dead will never come back. The living are still struggling hard. But it's okay. I have father, and Aunt Freya, and some strangers I don't know. They all still remember my mother. Her grave is never without flowers. Her mentor often goes to visit her. The man she loved the most misses her every minute and every second. Her beloved daughter is going to fulfill her unfinished wishes. And Aunt Freya. My mother probably didn't expect that. In the end, among her friends, it would be Freya who always remembers her and thinks of her. It would be Freya, protecting me on her behalf. A year after I graduated, Father held a wedding for me and Noah. When Noah and I bowed to Father, he smiled with a tenderness that reached his bones, yet with a sense of relief. Suddenly, I had a bad premonition in my heart. After the wedding, I canceled the honeymoon trip and started staying by his side without leaving. But on the anniversary of Mother's death, Father still left. Perhaps he was afraid that if I cried and made a fuss, he would soften and be reluctant to go. So he didn't let me see him off on his final journey. He only left me a suicide note. Violet. Forgive Father. Your mother was too lonely by herself. I have to go accompany her. After I die, cremate me, turn me into ashes, and take them to the place where your mother died back then. Scatter my ashes there. I'm going to find her. I'm going to find my Elise. Violet. Father is very happy. This moment is the happiest moment in Father's 18 years. So, let Father go. Will you personally send Father off? Okay, Violet. I clutched the letter my father left me, squatting on the ground, crying uncontrollably. Noah didn't disturb me. He just quietly stayed behind me, just like when we were kids. He is my shadow, my tail, my little support. He is the presence that puts me at ease. Chapter 19. I took my father's ashes to the place where my mother died years ago. The junkyard no longer looked as chaotic and dirty as it did back then. I returned to the old place by memory, gently scattering my father's ashes. Noah held my hand tightly the whole time, never letting go. That night, I had a beautiful dream. In the dream, Father was young and handsome, with a head full of black hair. Mother was beautiful and gentle, her smile especially sweet. They both held my hands as I was learning to walk. I stumbled and ran into their arms. Then Father lifted me high and placed me on his shoulders. Mother kept laughing. When Father looked at her, his eyes were full of tenderness. I must have cried for a long time in the dream. The pillow was soaked with tears. Noah gently held me. Violet. I will always be with you. Chapter 20. In the 3rd year after our marriage, I was pregnant and about to give birth. On the day of delivery, Freya brought nearly 100 bodyguards, surrounding the hospital inside and out. It's great. She really looks like a badass female boss now. It instantly made me feel completely secure. Noah felt a bit aggrieved. Violet. Is Auntie putting on this show to warn me? But she doesn't know. I wish I could give birth for you. How could I ever feel wronged by you? He made me laugh so hard that my stomach started to hurt, and I was immediately wheeled away by the nurse. I successfully gave birth to a pair of fraternal twins. The boy was named Jason Sue, and the girl was named Jenny Ning. Each child took one parent's surname. Noah said, I am an orphan with no name or surname, so family names or bloodline heritage mean nothing to me. Violet. I just want you to be happy and safe for the rest of your life. I just want Mother and Father to rest in peace in the afterlife. I just want Father to be relieved, knowing he didn't misjudge me, that he didn't see me wrong. When the babies were a month old, Noah and I took them to the cemetery. In front of my parents' grave, roses were planted everywhere. The wind blew, carrying a fragrant scent, breathtakingly beautiful, and in that splendid sea of flowers, I seemed to see the young Domingo and Elise again. It's said that kind-hearted people will be reborn into good families in their next life, blessed with fortune. My mother and father should now have gone to some well-off and prosperous family, being cherished and loved dearly, right? If I have a next life, I would still want to be their daughter. If there truly is a next life, then in that lifetime, the three of us will surely never be separated again.